We often view history through a pretty narrow lens, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
This whole West versus the rest idea. It kind of risks distorting things, making one civilization's path seem like the only one.
Yeah, the default setting, almost.
Exactly. So today, we're
Yeah,
broadening that view. We're taking a step back for this deep dive.
sounds good.
Our mission is to explore what historians call the classical period. That's roughly 3,500 BCE to 1,000 CE, but we'll really focus on that core bit, say 500 BCE to 500 CE.
Right, the real heart of it.
We're going to dive into the sources you've shared to understand how some of the world's greatest early empires and cultural systems developed, how they bumped into each other, converged, and also, crucially, how they diverged.
And that divergence is key.
Totally. And the goal here isn't to just drown you in facts and dates. It's about clarity, connecting those dots, and hopefully giving you some of those, aha moments that make this stuff click.
And that broader perspective is really what world history tries to achieve. Now, there's a fair point that sometimes, looking globally might simplify things a bit too much.
Like the nuances get lost.
Exactly. Take Chinese history, it's incredibly rich, so complex. Any slice you take in a world history context is bound to simplify it. But I think for all those potential drawbacks, the gains, they really outweigh the liabilities.
How so?
Well, it just gives you a much richer context for understanding the whole human story, right?
Hmm.
And you'll hear us using BCE and CE before the Common Era.
Instead of BC and AD.
Right. And that little shift in terms, it's useful. It reminds us we're consciously stepping away from that purely Western-focused history many of us grew up with.
Absolutely. A useful reminder. Okay, so before we jump into these big classical empires, let's set the stage a bit. What is civilization anyway? It's more than just lots of people, right?
Oh, definitely. Civilization, as a way humans organize themselves, it grows out of farming societies, but it wasn't like an automatic next step.
Not inevitable.
No, not at all. It actually took something like 5,000 years between when agriculture first started and when the first proper civilizations popped up in the Middle East.
Wow, 5 millennia. So what are the markers then? What makes it a civilization?
Okay, so you're looking for a few key things. Cities, first off. Not just scattered towns, but integrated urban centers. You need formal states, governments, laws.
Writing
is huge, yeah. And enough extra food, agricultural surplus, so not everyone has to farm all the time.
which lets people specialize.
Precisely. You get a division of labor. That leads to more complex social structures, distinct upper and lower classes, which almost always meant more inequality than before.
Right. And often a bigger capacity for war, too.
Often, yes. More resources, more organization.
And were there key technologies driving this?
Good question. Yeah, earlier tech played a big role. Think about bronze that shows up in Mesopotamia around 4000 BCE,
Okay.
or the wheel, which probably came from nomads in Central Asia, brought in through migration. These things boosted military power, production.
And trade. Like you mentioned, bronze needs tin.
Exactly. Tin isn't found everywhere, so getting it forced long-distance trade, connecting regions in new ways. It sort of laid the groundwork.
Got it. So that's the foundation. Then we get the major players. You mentioned early civilizations popping up in river valleys.
That's right. 4 main spots initially. Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus River Valley, that's Harappan civilization, and the Yellow River, or Huanghe, in China. Makes sense, right? Rivers mean water for farming, irrigation.
Perfect spots. But the classical civilizations we're focusing on today, they grew much bigger, beyond just the river valleys.
Oh yeah, way bigger. They expanded to cover huge territories, massive populations. We're going to zero in on 3 big ones for comparison. China, India, and the Mediterranean, which really means Greece and later Rome.
And the scale is just immense. You said, what, 50 million people each for China and Rome at their peak?
Over 50 million, yeah. It's truly staggering for the ancient world. Hard to even wrap your head around.
It really is. Okay, so let's unpack these giants. How did they define themselves? What were their sort of core beliefs, their ethics, the cultural glue?
That's the fascinating part, how different their answers were.
Right. So China first. You described it as quite secular.
Markedly secular, yes. I mean, the dominant force becomes Confucianism. It's all about political order, hierarchy, knowing your place and duties in society.
Rulers need to be wise, people need to work hard and show deference.
Exactly. Very focused on this world, on social harmony. Then you also get Taoism, which is almost the flip side, harmony with nature, contemplation, kind of a spiritual withdrawal.
On balance,
In a way. And there's a third strand, legalism, which was much harsher. believed people were naturally bad and needed strict laws, authoritarian rule.
Sounds intense.
It was. But interestingly, Confucianism and Taoism often managed to coexist as long as you didn't challenge the state itself. There was a degree of tolerance there.
Okay, so China's focus is largely secular, social order. How does India compare? You called it the most spiritual.
Yeah, a real contrast. India gives us Hinduism, which evolves over a long time from ancient Indo-European stories brought in by migrating groups. Big focus on moral, spiritual meanings, defining a priestly caste, the Brahmins.
And Buddhism.
Buddhism emerges from that same environment. It shares ideas with Hinduism, reincarnation, things like that. But crucially, it rejects the caste system.
Ah.
It stresses spiritual equality, that anyone can achieve enlightenment through contemplation, withdrawal from worldly stuff. So India's whole ethical framework is wrapped up in dharma, moral duty, and spiritual progress.
So very different vibes. What about the Mediterranean, Greece, and Rome? Where do they fit on this spectrum?
Well, they started with polytheistic religions, gods and goddesses, probably also from those Indo-European roots. But later, these myths get new artistic, literary treatments. They become sources for ethical models.
Like the heroes in the epics.
Exactly. But the really distinctive thing is the development of abstract philosophy. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, asking fundamental questions about life, ethics, the state, and a strong interest in scientific thinking, using reason.
So more philosophical, more reason-based than India's spirituality.
Generally, yes. Until Christianity really takes hold later on, the classical Mediterranean feels more secular than India, but maybe less state-directed in its secularism than China.
Okay, so we're seeing these really distinct twists then. India, divine rules, spiritual goals. China, duty to society, mostly secular reasons. Mediterranean, individuals using reason to figure out ethics.
That's a great summary.
And you said this wasn't just philosophy, it actually shaped how people behaved day to day.
Absolutely. It gets embedded deep in the culture. Think about anger, for example.
Okay.
In classical China, losing your temper in public. Deeply shameful. A loss of face, lack of self-control. But imagine a Roman senator in the forum.
Right, a fiery speech could be seen as powerful, passionate.
Exactly. Righteous indignation could be a virtue. Or think about age. China had this profound veneration for elders. Age equals wisdom, respect.
Whereas Greece and Rome often idealized youth, the strong, athletic hero.
Precisely. That premium on youthful vigor, these aren't small things. They shape the very fabric of life. Who gets admired, how you're expected to act.
That's a really powerful illustration. Okay, so if we connect these cultural foundations to how they organize themselves politically, I imagine we see big differences there too.
Oh, definitely. The political structures really reflect these underlying values. China, going back to that emphasis on order.
Strong central state.
Immense emphasis on it, yeah. They developed this uniquely large bureaucracy. At the peak of the Han Dynasty, maybe 1% of the whole population worked for the state.
Wow.
And they had specific training, even exams for these officials. It's a tradition of centralization that proves incredibly durable in China.
Okay, and India.
Much less emphasis on politics as the main organizing principle. Classical India is more about smaller, decentralized states, local princes. There's just less focus on political theory, political ideology compared to the others.
Even though they had empires like the Mauryan and Gupta.
They did. Those were significant periods. But it wasn't the same consistent imperial tradition as China. Often, the caste system provided the social glue that a strong central state might provide elsewhere.
Interesting. In the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
Politically.
Very strong political emphasis there. Lots of writing and debate about the nature of the state, what citizens owed the state, different forms of government.
The republics and empires.
Exactly. They tried both. And Rome, of course, built a particularly successful, long-lasting imperial model. Very different path from India's decentralization or China's bureaucracy.
The contrasts are really stark when you put them side by side. Now, science and technology. This is where it gets really interesting for me. How do they stack up?
Yeah, another area of fascinating divergence. China had this particularly elaborate focus on empirical science.
Meaning practical science. Useful stuff.
Exactly. Science that led to useful technology, often funded by the state because it benefited the economy or military. For a very long time, China was probably the world's single most important source of technological innovation.
And their inventions spread.
Absolutely. Things percolated westward, paper, gunpowder eventually, the compass, many crucial inventions.
Okay, so China's practical. What of the Mediterranean? Greece and Rome.
Noticeably more theoretical in their science, especially the Greeks. Brilliant geometry, astronomy, philosophy of science, but maybe less focused on production technology.
Why do you think that was?
Well, their civil engineering was top-notch roads, aqueducts, amazing stuff. But production tech wasn't a huge strength. One theory is their heavy reliance on slave labor might have reduced the incentive to invent labor-saving devices.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay, and India, where do they... I've heard the concept of zero.
Independently developed the concept of zero, yes, which is just
Okay.
a monumental intellectual achievement. It completely revolutionized mathematics and calculation. Huge deal.
So different strengths, different focuses again. Now, social structures. You mentioned earlier that civilization generally increased inequality. Formal hierarchies, patriarchy.
Almost certainly, yes. Compared to simpler farming or nomadic societies, civilizations tend to formalize those divisions much more, but how they did it varied a lot.
Like the slavery example.
Right. The Mediterranean, especially Rome, relied massively on slavery. It was fundamental to their economy, agriculture, mining, even a way to reward soldiers. Han China, though, had comparatively few slaves, mostly domestic servants. Their economy didn't really depend on slavery in the same way.
And India had the caste system.
Exactly. Its own unique, incredibly rigid system of social division based entirely on birth.
Yeah.
Fixed roles, fixed status. Very different from Roman slavery or Chinese social hierarchy.
What about women's roles? Generally patriarchal everywhere.
Largely patriarchal, yes, across all three. But there were variations. Some evidence suggests that, say, upper-class women in Egypt, even into the classical period influenced by Greece and Rome, might have had a bit more leeway, more property rights perhaps, than in some other classical societies. But the overall trend was patriarchal.
Okay. This is all building a picture of really distinct worlds. Maybe the most powerful comparison is looking at the fate of the giants Rome and Han China.
Ah, yes, a classic comparison.
Because the similarities are striking, right? Their duration, Han, about 400 years, Rome, 500 years.
Roughly, yes. Remarkable longevity.
Their size, we mentioned, huge territories, 50 million plus people. Both had these long periods of internal peace. The Pax Romana, Pax Seneca.
That's right, eras of relative stability under a unified rule.
And then they both faced similar problems leading to decline.
Strikingly similar pressures, yes. Growing economic problems, stagnation, devastating waves of disease that hit populations hard.
Invasions.
And invasions, particularly from nomadic groups moving out of Central Asia. Both empires faced immense pressure on their borders.
So this raises the huge question, doesn't it? Given all those parallels, scale, duration, even the reasons for decline, why did Western Rome fall and basically stay fallen, never revived as a whole?
Right.
While Han China, after its collapse in a period of chaos, eventually saw its core institutions, its whole model, revived by later dynasties.
This is one of the biggest aha moments in comparative world history, I think.
Why the difference?
Well, one compelling way to think about it is this. After the Han collapse, the Chinese went through centuries of disunity, yes, but ultimately they looked back and couldn't really imagine a better system than what the Han had created.
So they aimed to restore it.
Exactly. The goal became restoration, revival, like rebuilding a magnificent old building according to the original blueprints because you believe those blueprints are the best possible design.
Okay, and Rome.
Rome, after its fall in the West. Well, it was remembered, certainly. Its legacy was immense law, language, architecture. But it never quite achieved that same status as the only conceivable ideal for a large state in the region.
So people didn't try to put the exact same empire back together.
Not in the same way. Its institutions were selectively used, adapted, remembered, but there wasn't that powerful, unifying drive to fully reconstitute the Roman Empire in the West. It was more like salvaging valuable pieces from the ruins versus rebuilding the entire structure. A story of remembrance and selective use versus a story of revival.
That's a fascinating distinction. Remembrance versus revival. And these collapses, whether leading to revival or not, they mark the end of an era, right? The classical period drew to a close. What were the really lasting changes?
We can point to three really durable shifts. First, for a long time, there was a diminished emphasis on empire itself. Society seemed less capable or maybe less interested in maintaining those huge integrated political systems.
Okay, let's focus on massive empires. What else?
Second, a definite shift towards greater religious emphasis. As the big political structures weakened and life perhaps felt more precarious due to economic decline, disease, people increasingly looked for meaning and solace elsewhere.
Toward religion and spirituality.
Yes. They looked for cultural alternatives, spiritual values that transcended the old political loyalties of the classical era. This helped pave the way for the rise and spread of major world religions.
Makes sense. And the third change?
The third was specific to the Mediterranean. Its unity, forged by Rome, was permanently broken. It divided into three distinct successor zones: Western Europe, the Byzantine Empire in the east, which was really the Eastern Roman Empire carrying on, and the rest of the Mediterranean coast, including North Africa, which soon took a very different path, particularly with the rise of Islam. That old Roman lake was never quite the same again.
Okay, so diminished empire, more religion, and a fractured Mediterranean. That really sets the stage for the next phase of history.
Absolutely, the post-classical era.
So to kind of wrap this up, what we've really explored today is this incredible tapestry of the classical world. It wasn't monolithic. Different regions developed these unique answers, these distinct cultural, political, social signatures in response to common challenges like building large societies.
Right. And it shows that even when faced with similar opportunities, maybe similar starting points, the paths taken could be dramatically different. Geography mattered, earlier traditions mattered, but so did the actual choices people and societies made about their values and structures.
Which is why looking at them side by side comparatively is so valuable.
Exactly. The regional stories are crucial. You need that depth. But the comparative lens, looking at China alongside India, alongside the Mediterranean, reveals these deeper patterns and divergences in the human story.
So the final thought for you listening. What does all this ancient history mean for us today? Consider that difference between Rome and Han China's fate.
The revival versus remembrance point.
Yeah. If the Han model proved resilient enough to be consciously revived after collapse, and the Roman one didn't quite achieve that in the West, what does that suggest about the staying power of different kinds of societal structures, different cultural blueprints, even when facing similar crises?
It's a big question about resilience and cultural memory.
And thinking about our own time, our own complex global situation, what are the historical signatures we're creating now? Which aspects of our cultures, our political systems, our technologies might prove enduring centuries from now, and which might turn out to be more fragile than we think? Something to ponder.